Why are many reforms failing? Why have they failed over the years, and why do they keep failing? That's what we want to talk about now. We're talking about Nigeria's public service. It's faced a plethora of limiting challenges over the years. The body was once acclaimed for professionalism and notable achievements. However, performance disablers such as political intervention, career officials, consistent abdication of professional obligations, patronage, cronyism, continue to deplete its profile. Now, this situation is a setback for a public service that oversaw the merger of colonial departments into ministries, the Nigerianization of the top cadres of the service, the compilation of civil service rules and codes of conduct, and so many other things, between the 67 and 70 years, 1967 and 1970 years in the country. Now, during this period, the service provided a guidance crucial to the country's survival when its existence was challenged. The public service led the implementation of an ambitious post-war reconstruction, resettlement, and development project that lasted until the mid-70s. Let's have conversations around this because we understand that the Aig Imoukhuede Foundation commissioned an in-depth research study on public sector reforms in response to this decline. The study examines the situation of past and present public sector reforms, identified impediments to the sustained success, and proposes recommendations that will contribute to improving the public service reforms in the future. Chioma Njoku joins us this morning. He's Director of Programs, Aig Imoukhuede Foundation. She's Director of Programs, Aig Imoukhuede Foundation. Thank you for joining us this morning, madam. Truly appreciate your time with us today.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Morning. Talk to us, first of all, about why the Aig Imoukhuede Foundation was interested in this rethinking reforms process.
Okay, thank you. The Aig Imoukhuede Foundation is, unlike many, we focus solely on public sector transformation. And we believe that the public service, both civil and the wider public service, are the key to driving any sort of development in a country. And so we know that the service has tried over years to carry out different kinds of reforms, both within it and sectorally, from finance and banking to telecommunications and all of that. And many times, reforms have fallen short of their original plan or expectations. And so instead of the foundation to continue just, trying to work within government, we thought to pause and say, why have past reforms within the service not achieved as much traction or not achieved the vision and the goal for which they were embarked on? Different commissions have been set up. What have those commissions done? Had recommendations been implemented? And what have hampered them? And so let's try and find out. And that's exactly what we did with the reforms research.
Okay. I understand that there are plans to make it public. If you can just give us an insight, what are some of the findings from this public sector reforms initiative? The team, we plan to host a national workshop next week, Tuesday, where these findings will be discussed in detail with a broad range of stakeholders, from the media to politically appointed personnel, whether elected or appointed, to the core civil servants, to the academia, across board, to talk about what we have seen in the research across the country, because research was carried out across all zones. So we don't want to talk about the details now, but what I can say is that it's not anything that is far-fetched, right? Things around the basics. Instead of creating ministries or merging ministries or scrapping ministries, if the people within those organizations are not focused on, are not reformed,
then no matter the structural adjustments that we try to put in place, it will not stand. The foundations of the service need to be looked into, and it takes every stakeholder, not just the government. It takes private sector, it takes the service beneficiaries themselves. We who receive these government services, we are all involved in reforms.
If you can volunteer this, how far back does the rot go?
I'm not that old, but since I've been born and been knowledgeable about reforms, right, I will just pick one. Accountability has been an issue as far back as I know. And that is something that the private sector has tried to deal with and has gotten change right and things moving fast. If as a director of programs in my organization, I'm not accountable to both my superior and my subordinates, then there's a problem. If I'm not transparent enough for my team members to see what I'm doing, to know what I'm doing, to be able to have input and ask me questions and keep me on my toes, then there's a problem. And the current public service that we have lacks that. And accountability, transparency is the very key ingredient, in achieving sustainable service delivery.
Interesting. Now, because the reason I asked that question is, now there are some people talking about some protests from the 1st of August. And I did a bit of research. I happen to know that there was a protest in 1978, 46 years ago. And this protest was about the same issue being raised now. That's why I'm asking how far back does the rot go? The protest at the time was against the cost of living. And it was the university students of the day that said they weren't happy with the increase in school fees that they had. So if the rot goes back that far, the longest anyone can spend in civil service is 35 years, or by the time you attain the age of 60 or 65. Now, and we are looking for a reform change now, a change that will bring sustainable development, a progressive reforms, so to speak, because it's not something that we can just press reset and it will just happen. So what are the chances of this project working?
Interestingly, I was listening to your show a few minutes ago with the other guests, and I was commenting with my colleague, and I said, before we move from black to white, we can't jump, which is what you just said now. It's a whole spectrum. We need to be willing as a country to take it a step at a time. And like I said some few minutes ago, it takes every stakeholder to drive reforms. It's not a government business. It's not a political business. It's not a presidential business. It is everybody's business. It is the media's business. It is the secondary schools, people's business. So it is the labor unions' business. It is the religious organizations' business. It's everybody's business to drive reforms. And that's what we're trying to say, that we all need to be in the room to think about. You don't just do reforms and then backtrack to say, oh, why are we doing reforms? We need to talk about who do we want to be as a country.
What
kind of public service do we want to have?
Okay, all right, good. So what are some of the objectives of the national workshop to address this public sector reform challenges in the country?
So it's to bring all these key stakeholders into a room, to share the findings, and to let each of the stakeholder groups understand that we all have equal responsibilities. If any of the stakeholder groups drops the ball, I don't believe that we'll get it right. If the government alone decides to push forward without the private sector, without the media, holding them to account and showing that transparency to citizens, then it will be done in the dark. And public trust is important in ensuring that reforms achieve the desired objectives.
How do we sustain it is the question. And I'm glad you already cited it. But I'm sorry. A good number of people are almost as pessimistic as I am about fantastic initiatives really getting off the ground. There are those who have talked about the fact that the problem that we have in our country is not that of ideas. We always have amazing ideas, and we always have excellent plans. But the challenge over the years has always been that of implementation, execution. How do you see us addressing that?
So the national workshop we are convening is not a solution. It's a conversation starter. That's how I see it. It's to say, these are the issues. This is what we should be looking at. Let us come as different stakeholder groups who have different expertise and know the problems from different contexts, and let's begin to work towards the answer. That's the sustainability for us. It's not going to be done in one day, like you said. It won't even be achieved in 1 year. It's a marathon. And we're willing as an organization to get people in the room, to get people galvanized, to start having the conversations that need to be had. After the workshop, we plan to still go ahead to have, focus group discussions in detail with each of these key stakeholders. So the national workshop is just a conversation starter.
Okay. So you're already getting into the next question that I was going to ask you about, what the expected outcomes of these national workshops are. So that's what the expected outcomes of this national workshop. Now, you talked about having sustained consultations with certain groups on this. What other things are we to expect outside, or rather as a result of this workshop?
That people are awakened to their responsibilities. Because like you said, protests are one way of dealing with things, but are they the first? That's the first thing we should do, right? We have people around us, and I also don't believe that the public service is entirely divorced from our everyday life, right? They are human beings. It's somebody's father, it's someone's brother, it's someone's husband, it's someone's neighbor. Are we holding ourselves accountable at home, outside the office? So these conversations transcend the venue of the national workshop to becoming aware of our individual and collective responsibilities in ensuring that things are done right in Nigeria.
Okay, so what's the program likely to look like?
We have a team of professors that we commissioned to work with us in carrying out this research, and they're spread across all the geopolitical zones, like I said, because we understand that just sampling and getting research from Abuja will not give us a full picture of how people feel across board in Nigeria. So that team of professors will be there at the workshop to deliver for 1 hour the findings of the research in a very high-level summary. Afterwards, we followed with a panel discussion where we have experts from across sectors, private and public alike, who will dive into the just presented findings and talk about how they have, as both public servants, as private sector workers, as development partners, have experienced these disablers to reforms in the course of their work, and what they propose, they will have done better, at different points. Following that, we then have focused contributions where people who have had decades of experience in both planning and implementing reforms would talk in great detail about what they have experienced in government, firsthand, and what they've experienced whether it's in judiciary, in the presidency, and across board, what the issues were in their time, and what the advice that the different stakeholder groups begin to do to change things around going forward.
And who are the people that are expected to be in the room, the target audience?
Sorry, I didn't get you. I lost sound briefly.
Who are the people expected to be in the room? Who are the target audience?
All stakeholder groups. We invited political party representatives, we invited people from the academia, we invited people from the media, we invited everybody, non-profits, development partners, across board. It's a conversation for all stakeholder groups service beneficiaries, we all need to come together and discuss the findings of this research and how each of us as stakeholders have contributed actually to the failure of reforms and what we can do differently going forward.
That's very interesting. So how about the ordinary Nigerian, the young people, the teenagers, the very huge young population, the youth bulge that we have in the country? How are they involved in this?
As you would notice, I'm a youth. And the team of people who works in this are also made up of young people like myself. Apart from the physical gathering in Abuja, right, there's also going to, it's a hybrid session. There's going to be live streaming where everybody gets the chance to engage the conversations, leave comments, because there's also going to be Q&A sessions after the focus contributor sessions. So we want to hear from everybody. And like I said, it's a conversation starter. We are collating feedback. We are collating thoughts and ideas from across Nigeria, across the world, as many people who can contribute to the conversations, because we all need to see what we think as people from different areas and how we can put them together to create a path or a roadmap for carrying out successful reforms in Nigeria.
So is there a website where people can get more information about this national workshop?
Of course, the Aig Imoukhuede Foundation website. That's www.aigimoukhuedefoundation.org.
Okay, I'm on that website now, and I'm seeing quite a lot of things that have happened over the years. Let me not mention the pounds and naira figures that I can see on that website right now, because it's very, 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 very tormenting. But that's the conversation, transforming Africa's public sector, and the issues that have been raised and that are being raised. That's what you have on the website right now. Now, the reason I asked you, madam, about the young people is because generally youths are not very, very patient to see all these issues that you're talking about. We just want good governance and we want it now. Now, you also said something the other time that it's not a 100-meter dash. It's not even a marathon. It's an adventure. And sometimes in an adventure you run, sometimes you walk, sometimes you sleep, and all of those things. Now, we do not have the time. We have the time. We don't have the patience to wait. What would be your counsel to everyone watching now, particularly young people, who will be the ones in public service in another 40, 45 years from now?
Thank you. That's a very critical question. And my simple counsel would be that reforms begins with you. How do you behave at home? How accountable are you? How transparent are you? Because the people we point fingers at in government were once young people, right? I was discussing yesterday that these people rose probably from, you were once a class rep, you were once an SUG president, you once held positions as a younger person. How are you dispensing that power? Are you interested in actually serving, or do you enjoy the paraphernalia of being in power or being empowered to do something? So reforms and those people who are going to be in government in 40 years, in 30 years, in 20 years, it begins now. What kinds of cultures and morals are we building in ourselves as young people to ensure that when we get to a place of power, we don't become power drunk? We don't begin to see ourselves as mini gods and not as people who are there to serve. So I really don't like to point fingers at people in places of power and government per se. I like to look at myself to say, as Chioma, what am I doing in my small space to ensure that the right cultures and values are being entrenched around me? Because we all have small areas where we can control or where we can ensure that we've set things right. If we all do that, from the houses to the schools, to the churches, to the mosques, if we all take ownership of reforms, we won't be here having this conversation today.
Madam, I remember when I was in secondary school, and I'd like you to speak to that in the light of today. I didn't have juniors for the first 1 or 2 years because the school was trying to scrap the boarding school system at the time. But meanwhile, when the announcement was given to some of my classmates, they said, no way, how can we not have juniors? Because our own seniors showed us shaggy. I wanted to show other people shaggy, you know. Now, to how does that relate to now is how do we persuade people who will get into these positions of power, of authority, as you say, to not do the same shaggy to other people that they did to them?
It's a tough one, but it's not impossible. Mindset change requires constant communication, and that's where the media comes in. What you see and hear consistently over a period of time becomes who you are. So what are we communicating to them? What are we ingesting? What do we see? What do we watch most often? Right? I like to say that the media has a very critical role to play because, you know, people watch from all states, from across the country. And so the kinds of things we bombard people with is what will shape their thought process, is what will shape their behaviors. And this thing you mentioned of lack of patience, I mean, I really can't say how we're going to deal with it because the world itself is very fast, right? But if we have the right values and have the right cultures in place, no matter how fast you want to go, you will not go off tangent, you won't go off track.
Thank you so much for that one. So the date again and the venue for this national workshop?
30th July, next week Tuesday, 30th July. The venue is the Sheikh Musa Yar'Adua Center, but you have to register. On the website, there is a link to register so that we know that you're coming.
The event will start at what time?
9 a.m. sharp. No, I don't like to say African time, but yeah, no late time. 9 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Okay. I'm assuming that even when you get to the venue, there is going to be a registration process?
Yes, okay. Yes. We need to verify that you have registered. Yeah, because there's a guest list. So you should register online and then show up.
We have to thank you very much for your time this morning. Chairman Njoku, Director of Programs, Aig Imoukhuede Foundation, and we wish you all the best at this workshop. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Ayo. I'm grateful to be here.
All right. So let's talk about some health when we return, shall we? This viral hepatitis in Nigeria. What's that all about? Stay with us.